Well, this is it. Part 4 of my FNAF Timeline series. After this, we'll have a default timeline that we can go back to whenever we need to adjust it. And considering Secret of the Mimic has already come out, I'm probably already gonna have to make some adjustments to it. But for now, let's just lay the groundwork for the rest of the timeline. Last we left off, the second Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location had just closed down after the bite of 87. All of the withered animatronics were moved to the original location, where William Afton tracked them down to dissect the robots and experiment on them. Shadow Freddy lures the animatronics into the safe room where William can dismantle them, knowing that doing so will release them from their animatronic shells so they can get their revenge. This is when he began to discover and experiment with Remnant, melting down the endoskeletons of the old animatronics. This is the thing that William Afton uses to power the Funtime animatronics, with the souls of the original 5 children all melted together to create Remnant in order to power his line of animatronics. But when William returned to the pizzeria on the 5th night, the spirits of the children attacked him. Now that they weren't inside their animatronic shells, they could go inside of the safe room that William was hiding in. William panicked and tried to scare them away by wearing his old spring Bonnie suit, to show that he was still as powerful as he ever was. But in the words of Palpatine, after years of being abandoned, the rain from outside was able to seep into the building, something that William didn't notice in his panic to escape the ghosts. All of the spring locks snapped into his body, making deep cuts all over him, causing him to collapse in his own pool of blood, and the remnants of his victims disappeared. The next day, Henry came to the pizzeria and found William in the safe room, trapped inside of the spring-lock suit, and somehow still alive. So he sealed him away, still trapped inside of that room, hoping that he would die. But William wasn't going to die that easily. He would come back. He always does. Back at home, Michael had discovered William's underground bunker, Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals. We're never told why Michael decides to finally go down there, but the ending cutscene of Custom Night seems to imply that William instructed Michael to go down there. This is where Michael discovers William's experiments with Remnant, the evidence that he was the one behind the missing children's incident, and he finds out that his sister's soul was inside of Baby. He even discovers the sound illusion discs that were used to torment him during FNAF 4. Over the course of 5 nights, Michael discovers more and more of his father's secrets, until the 5th night, where all of the animatronics combine together to form Ennard. He lures Michael into the scooping room, removes his organs, and uses his body as a skin suit to escape. As we see in the Custom Night cutscenes, his body slowly starts to decay, until Ennard is unable to keep his form any longer, and is forced to leave Michael's body. But the scooper is, first and foremost, a machine meant to extract and inject Remnant into things. This is how Michael was able to survive, even after all of his innards got replaced with Ennard. The Remnant flowing through his body was what was keeping him alive. And now that he knew the truth of his father, he was left with no choice but to find him.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Michael goes from pizzeria to pizzeria, being hired as the night guard for probably the same reason we see in the movie. Vandals and robbers are always trying to break into the buildings. Michael works for 5 nights on the job at each location before being fired for tampering with the animatronics. presumably as a way to try and free their spirits, until he reaches the FNAF 3 location, Fazbear Fright. I have left out the exact dates on this part of the timeline because, well, there aren't any exact dates for these moments in the games, but we do know that Michael's journey happened over the course of 30 years, because that's how long Springtrap was sealed behind the safe room wall before being released into Fazbear Frights, meaning that everything Michael Afton did between that time, discovering sister location, going to all the pizzerias, and trying to free the spirits, must have happened over the course of those 30 years. Man, he only got 3 jobs in 30 years? He sounds about as efficient for job hunting as me. Anyway, after 30 years, Fazbear Frights opens. They eventually discover the safe room in the old buildings, and set William Afton, now Springtrap, free once again. Michael goes to work at Fazbear Frights, where he finally confronts his father. And while Michael was dealing with his father, the puppet was dealing with the spirits, reuniting them all in the Happiest Day minigame, finally freeing the spirits of the children, as well as Michael's brother David, after so many years of being lost and in pain. But it doesn't fully work, because the souls of the victims were no longer complete. Remember, William Afton melted the endoskeletons and injected their remnant into the Funtime animatronics, so a piece of them is inside all of the Funtime animatronics, who have now taken the form of Ennard. This is why Charlie's mask falls to the ground slower than the others in the Happiest Day minigame. Her spirit lingers on a little longer than the others, because she has unfinished work. And on the 5th and final night of Fazbear Frights, Michael rigs the wiring to burn down the last bits of Freddy's to the ground, with his father, Springtrap, still trapped inside. But as we see in the Fazbear Fright newspaper, and in the final cutscene of Sister Location, Springtrap survived, which leads us to FNAF 6. After years of Michael trying to put the spirits of William's victims to rest, it was finally Henry's turn to lure them all in one place to burn. Night after night, more and more animatronics would appear at this new pizzeria. The puppet, Henry's daughter, trapped inside of Lefty, Michael's father, William Afton, who is now Scrap Trap, his sister, Circus Baby, who separated herself from Ennard to become Scrap Baby, and the rest of the children's spirits, who are now in the form of Molten Freddy. Once they're all gathered in one place, Henry and Michael set the place on fire in order to end everything.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
Well, it didn't end for everyone. There was one last victim of Williams that refused to move on. The one who had been brutalized beyond all the others. Cassidy, the second spirit inside of Golden Freddy, followed William down to hell so that she could torture him personally. Which leads us to Ultimate Custom Night. This is the game that shows William Afton's purgatory, held there by Cassidy, showing William all of the locations of his past. His underground bunker, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, his old house, Fazbear Frights, all of the monsters and machines that he had known, all attacking him at once. And despite Old Man Consequences trying to convince Cassidy to move on to the next life, she refuses, continuing to torment William in hell to this day. After a few years, Fazbear Entertainment was eventually rebuilt as an LLC company, owned by one singular person. The person who owns and is running Fazbear Entertainment now in the modern day is still a big mystery. I don't have an answer to it. But whoever it is decides to rebuild the franchise, and the first thing they do is rebuild their brand by clearing their name of all the murders of their past. As we read in Tales from the Pizzaplex, they hire a game developer named Steve. No, not that, Steve. Get that movie out of here. Jack Black, don't get me wrong, I love you, you're my favorite actor, but just no. Pick a better movie. The Steve I'm talking about was one that was hired to make indie games based off of the first 6 FNAF games, to get people excited and talking about Fazbear Entertainment again. Afterwards, Fazbear Entertainment created a virtual reality game, which is what we play in Help Wanted. To help develop the game, and to make it feel more authentic, they scanned some old animatronic circuit boards into the VR experience. And it wasn't just animatronics they recreated in VR, but locations as well. Obviously, you have the locations from FNAF 1 through Sister Location, but they also created a virtual reality version of Fall Fest. In the Halloween update with Foxy's Corn Maze, you can see the same water tower and windmill that appear in the Fall Fest minigames in Help Wanted 2. But unfortunately, one of the circuits that they scanned is M2, the Mimic program. The same one that William took and used to help program the Funtime animatronics and copy his behavior. So when the Mimic gets scanned into the VR game, it begins to act like him. It begins to wear the same costume that William wore. It begins to stuff people inside of suits like he did, and tries to take over someone's body in order to escape. And one of the people that it tries to escape through is Jeremy, a grown-up version of the bully from FNAF 4, the one who wore that Bonnie mask in 1983. Yep, it's time for another mini-theory. So, for those who don't know, we learned from the tapes in Help Wanted that there was a playtester before us named Jeremy. This was who Glitchtrap tried to take over the mind of originally, but failed to. And for a long time, we thought he was just some random indie game developer. But I don't think so. As I said, I think that the true identity of Jeremy isn't that he's just some random playtester. I think he was a technician for Fazbear Entertainment, specifically Cassie's dad, the bully who wore that Bonnie mask in the Bite of 83. How do I know this? Well, it comes down to this tape from Tape Girl.
I came in early that morning. No one else was there. At least that's what I thought. The supply room was lit. I didn't even notice Jeremy standing in the testing room as I walked past. The supply room was so bright, glowing from all the way down the hall. There was something that looked like a Halloween mask laying on the floor. I didn't understand. Ink must have spilled. It was only then that I heard a shuffle from the testing room and realized Jeremy must be there. I went back and peered in the window. I couldn't see his face. He had the visor covering his head. He had ink spilled on himself as well. The front of his shirt looked black in the dark room. He turned his head in my direction, but I don't think he knew I was there.
She talks about how she saw a Halloween mask on the floor with blood that she mistakes for ink. Why would Steelwool tell us this unless they were trying to say something important? Remember the Vanny mask from Ruin and how we were able to put it on in order to see augmented reality and sometimes virtual reality? And remember what that mask's interior design looked like. It was full of wires and circuits and lights, very Darth Vader-like. But the Vanny mask from Help Wanted DLC, The Curse of Dreadbear, looks nothing like that. If you look at the Curse of Dreadbear Vanny mask, it has a very fleshy, almost bloody interior, as if it was stuck on someone's face, and they were forced to cut it off. Now, why would that sound familiar? Remember, the Vanny masks are used to help technicians make digital repairs, and as we see in Ruin, they're also able to encounter digital entities when wearing that mask. What if Glitchtrap tried to take over Jeremy through that Vanny mask? But why wouldn't he just take off the mask? Why resort to something as extreme as using a paper cutter to cut the mask off his face? Well, remember that taking off the mask isn't enough. We see in Ruin how Cassie gets a chip implanted into her head when she first puts the mask on. That's how she's able to see Helpy even with the mask off. So just stick with me for a moment. Jeremy / Cassie's dad is using the Vanny mask to do some sort of repairs on the Help Wanted game. During this maintenance, he encounters Glitchtrap, who then tries to take him over. He takes off the mask, but that's not enough, because remember, even with the mask off, the wearer is still implemented into the Vanny network due to the chip. He uses the paper slicer to cut the mask off and remove the chip. And I have one more piece of evidence for this, which is the Candy Cadet story in Help Wanted 2.
Now let me tell you a story about a young woman who, when she was little, was led into a dark forest by a witch and almost eaten. She had fallen for the friendly voice without discernment and was led astray. She had escaped before being thrown into the oven, but would have a scar for the rest of her life. When she had grown, she sought revenge on the witch and entered the forest again willingly, this time with the confidence of age and experience. She was greeted at the mouth of the forest by a young boy who offered to help guide her through the darkness. She welcomed the help and followed the young boy over the river, through the jagged trees, and toward a small house. "Come," the boy said, "press here before killing the witch." The young woman was tired and would kill the witch in the morning. She followed the boy into the house. The oven door closed. The witch would finally have her meal.
So let me translate what I think this story is trying to say. I think this story is meant to be a retelling of the journey that Cassie's dad takes through the Help Wanted games. He encounters Glitchtrap for the first time in Help Wanted, nearly gets taken over by Glitchtrap, but is able to break free of his control, remember, using that paper slicer to get rid of the mask and the chip in his head. That would definitely leave a scar at least. Then, during Help Wanted 2, he tries to confront and get rid of Glitchtrap. Unfortunately, he's tricked by a friendly voice, Helpy. Remember, Helpy is the program who's supposed to help the technicians out. With Helpy's guidance, Glitchtrap is able to rise to power again, and this time completely take control of Cassie's dad, whose digital consciousness ends up in the mask bot that we see at the beginning of Ruin. Anyways, mini theory over, now let's get back to the timeline. After Glitchtrap's failed attempt at trying to transfer consciousness to Jeremy, he then tried to move on to the next beta tester, Tape Girl. She eventually discovers that Glitchtrap has attached herself to her files. She tries to delete them, but can't, so she fragments and disperses them into the 16 cassette tapes that we see in the game, the ones that Vanny collects, finds, and uses, and this is what causes Glitchtrap to take control of her. Vanessa now has the consciousness of Glitchtrap inside of her. Meanwhile, with Fazbear Entertainment, now that their name was cleared and their popularity was rising again, they began to rake in profit with a new service, the Fazbear Funtime service, a delivery app meant to bring animatronics to your house for any occasion.
That's right, with the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again. It's guaranteed! With our exclusive animatronics, you'll always have someone watching your back. They'll provide you with hours of fun entertainment and companionship. You can't hide from a future of fun. Our special delivery will make you jump from excitement. Subscribe today. Don't miss this opportunity. And remember, we're always watching out for you.
Birthday parties, Christmas events, St. Patrick's Day, 4th of July, all sorts of animatronics that will be shipped to homes across the world. all the while raking in more money for Fazbear Entertainment until they were able to build the Pizzaplex. To save on money, they decided to build it on top of the FNAF 6 location, but that was a big mistake, because unbeknownst to anyone else, there was something that was still alive underneath it. The Blob. Yeah, we really need to come up with a better name for that thing, because the Blob, that's just not an intimidating name. Anyway, if you don't know what the Blob is, it's discovered in the burn trap ending of Security Breach. This giant black blob of tentacles and animatronic parts appears in the boss battle with Burn Trap, and then again to drag Burn Trap away during the boss battle cutscene. Now, yes, that ending isn't canon, but we still see the blob appear in Ruin for a brief moment, so even if the blob doesn't take Burn Trap away, it still exists. And for those who don't know, it's largely agreed upon that the blob is a collection of agony from all the pieces and parts of the animatronics inside of it. That's why it collects other animatronic parts and adds it to itself. By combining more agony to itself, it becomes more powerful. You can actually see some of the pieces and parts that it's taken from the Pizzaplex in Security Breach. Those displays that are empty with nothing on them are pieces and parts of the old animatronics that the blob has taken and added to itself. That's why you see things like the original Baby design, the original Chica design, and the original Mangle design all inside of the blob. Despite a giant blob monster made of agony being underneath the Pizzaplex, they managed to successfully create the building, adding new animatronics like Glamrock Freddy, Glamrock Chica, even returning with some old mascots like Montgomery Gator and Roxanne Wolf. And with that, Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex opens, which leads us to the events of Security Breach. And unsurprisingly, there's a lot to talk about with this game. After the Pizzaplex opens, Fazbear Entertainment decides to use the Mimic program, M2, to help them operate the Pizzaplex. It's basically the computer that runs the entire building, controlling all of the technology and animatronics. But because it's been altered by William Afton, it's become corrupted, which is why it begins to corrupt the Pizzaplex and the animatronics inside of it. So from here on out, I'm going to be using the names M2 and Glitch Trap interchangeably, since they're both technically the same character. Anyway, now that M2 has become corrupted, it basically pulls a Monica and alters the personality of all the animatronics to heighten their worst traits. Chica goes from being a little hungry to a ravenous monster who eats everything in sight. Monty goes from being a reckless tough guy to being just a plain jerk who breaks everything. And Roxy goes from being a little competitive to an insecure mess obsessed with looks and winning. Even Freddy goes from being a nice guy to acting like a little kid who throws tantrums and wants to take toys from the other kids. But through corrupting the animatronics, Glitch Trap begins working on something personal. Remember, M2 is copying the behavior of William Afton. He has the same motive that William Afton did, the same motive of trying to put his son back together. And that's exactly what he tries to do, by rebuilding him as a robot. In the basement of the Pizzaplex, there's a room full of sticky notes with small scribbles and writings on them, as if it's a robot coming into consciousness, trying to remember what it is. And through these sticky notes, we see that it's not just a robot writing these notes, but a robot of the crying child, David Afton. You can tell based on the post-it notes that say, "All for me," the drawings of birthday parties, the drawing of a close-up Freddy, the drawing of 3 kids, the drawing of a birthday cake, the drawing of arrows pointing to the house, and above the sticky notes, you can find a recreation of the Afton family, with a poster of Fredbear's in the middle. M2 is copying William's motivation of trying to put his son back together. And we see that he succeeded in creating a robot version of his son. A robot who we happen to play as in Security Breach. The robot built to become David Afton is Gregory. I mean, M2 already recreated one child named David in the form of a robot. Why not another? Recreating the child of the person that M2 is copying. And that wasn't the only thing of Williams that Glitch Trap was copying. He was also manipulating Vanessa, getting her to carry on the tradition of dressing up in a bunny suit to lure kids and kill them.
Yes, I hear you. I know. No. There's no miscommunication. you down. It will be fun.
As we see in the newspaper, she's taken at least 9 victims from the restaurant. Because of all this, the security around the Pizzaplex has been increased significantly by the time we see it in Security Breach.
Locked again? Why does a pizza place need so much security?
They are required safety measures due to past issues.
So M2 moves on to other projects. M2, with the help of Gregory and Vanessa, manages to deactivate the Mixis program that was made by Fiona. Also, this is when I begin to talk about Mixis and M1, so I think now is a good time to address this. I was actually wrong in my previous theory about Mixis being a creation of William Afton. After that video came out, I decided to go back and replay Secret of the Mimic to look for anything that I might have missed. And sure enough, one of the things that I missed was a description for parachute.exe. This email makes it abundantly clear that Mixis was Fiona's idea, not William's. Remember how in that video I said that Fiona's whole motivation was that she wants to fix M1 so that they can be a family again? Well, that's why she built the Mixis. As we see in the parachute.exe program, Mixis was essentially a program that was meant to contain M1 until M2 was able to fix it. That's why she's after the schematics in the first place, so that she can use them to try and fix M1. And in the meantime, she's using Mixis to keep it at bay. As for why M1 decided to take the schematics out of the wreckage of the car, I still don't know that. Anyway, back on track. M2, with the help of Gregory and Vanessa, deactivates the Mixis program in order to free M1 from the basement of the underground pizzeria. But that's impossible, isn't it? Why would M1 still be sealed up in ruin if Vanessa and Gregory already freed it? Don't worry, I'll address that in a minute. For now, just stick with me. Vanessa and Gregory free M1 from William's underground bunker, using Glamrock Freddy to excavate their way down there, which itself is underneath Fredbear's Family Diner, which itself is underneath FNAF 6, which itself is underneath Security Breach. Man, a lot of buildings get built on top of each other in this series, don't they? Anyways, Vanessa and Gregory begin to fix up M1, making it bigger and stronger, able to kill easier, which is why it looks so different in Ruin compared to how it looks in Secret of the Mimic. But there's something else besides M2 that's controlling the Pizzaplex, a spirit of protection that lingers on, Charlie. Her spirit begins to haunt the Pizzaplex itself, as evidenced by the Nightmarian plushies that appear in random places, the black and white striped cords that appear throughout the building in arcade games. And it's through corrupting those arcade games that Gregory is eventually freed from M2's control. We see that playing specific arcade games is what causes Glitchtrap's control over people to break, as evidenced by Princess Quest. So I believe that similar to Vanessa, one of the arcade games that Gregory played was what caused him to break free from Glitchtrap's control, which is why he doesn't know who Vanny is and why the animatronics are after him by the time we see him in Security Breach. And I think that the arcade game that was the one to break Glitchtrap's control over Gregory specifically was the Balloon Boys Air Adventure game, based on this email that we get in Security Breach. If this was the arcade game that was freeing Gregory from the control of Glitchtrap, it would make sense why M2 would order Vanny to remove those arcade games, because the only times you see the Balloon Boys Air Adventure arcade game is underground in Vanessa's hideout, and in another hideout behind the daycare theater. After Gregory is freed, comes the events that play out in Security Breach. Gregory breaks free from Glitchtrap's corruption. Glamrock Freddy searches for Gregory in the crowd one night during a performance. But because he has the spirit of Michael Afton inside of him, when he spots Gregory, aka David Afton, it causes his system to go haywire, leading him to be rebooted in safe mode and freeing him from the corruption of Glitchtrap as well. After fighting against the animatronics in the Pizzaplex, Gregory eventually manages to beat all the Princess Quest arcade games and free Vanessa from Glitchtrap's corruption too. Now that all 3 of them have been freed, they leave the Pizzaplex, as we see in the Savior ending of Security Breach, leaving Vanny's mask behind. Now that all of them were freed, they needed to seal up M1 once again, so they put it behind a wall of concrete and reactivated the Mixis program. This is why I said that they managed to free the Mimic even though you still see it sealed up behind that wall of concrete in ruin. It would give an explanation as to why Gregory's backpack is down there, how the Mimic knows what Gregory sounds like, and why it looks different than how it looks in Secret of the Mimic. But unfortunately, they also gave the Mimic the means to escape once again. because one of the things that they left down there was Gregory's walkie-talkie. Even with M1 sealed away with the Mixus guarding it, there's still trouble in the Pizzaplex, in the form of the Blob. As we see in the newspapers in Ruin, an earthquake causes the Pizzaplex to be destroyed. Now, whether this is the Blob that causes the earthquake or just a natural disaster, we don't know, but I suspect it's the Blob. And so the Pizzaplex is shut down for repairs. Around this time come the events of Help Wanted 2, where we play as Cassie's dad, the bully from FNAF 4 who wore that Bonnie mask. We see that he grows up to become a technician to study robotics, presumably as a means to make amends for causing the death of David Afton. But, as I mentioned in my recap for Candy Cadet's story, he eventually gets tricked by Glitchtrap once again, causing his consciousness to be transferred into the staff bot that gives Cassie the Vanny mask. Meanwhile, as we see in the second ending of that game, Vanny is also confronting Glitchtrap once more. After playing the last Princess Quest arcade game, she becomes completely freed of his corruption. The Mimic once again tries to deceive someone into helping it. Both M1 and M2 guide and trick a girl named Cassie, who happens to be Jeremy's daughter and Gregory's best friend. They trick her into descending deeper and deeper beneath the Pizzaplex until she reaches the Mimic. I've seen some people ask the question, why didn't M2 try to brainwash Cassie the same way it did with Vanessa, by turning her into the next generation of killer? And I think the reason for that is because Cassie is simply too young to start luring and killing other kids, which is why instead of telling her to make her own rabbit costume and kill kids herself, she tricks Cassie into freeing M1 so that it can go out and kill people itself. Right as the Mimic is about to kill her, she's saved at the last minute by Roxanne Wolf, who, just like Glamrock Freddy, has been freed from the corruption of M2, as evidenced by the green coat around her and by the fact she's acting like her normal self. Once Cassie gets to the elevator to escape, she manages to contact Gregory. It's unclear whether this is the real Gregory talking over the speakers, or if it's the Mimic once again trying to trick her. But regardless, the power in the elevator goes down. She's sent plummeting, trapped down in the basement, with the Mimic set free once again. And as far as the series goes, that's it so far. We're left on that big cliffhanger at the end of Ruin. Cassie and Roxy are now under the Pizzaplex and the Mimic is now freed. And with that, we've completed the FNAF Timeline. As they release more books, more games, and DLC, I'm sure it's going to be changed a lot. But for the most part, this is going to be my default timeline to look back on and refresh myself on the series' lore. If I ever need to go back to check the evidence for something, or make adjustments to a future theory, this is what I'm going to use. Is it 100% set in stone? Of course not. But I don't think any FNAF timeline can be. But I do feel really confident that I'm onto something with this timeline. But what do you guys think? Is this a satisfying timeline? Does this answer a lot of your questions? I would genuinely like to know if this timeline series helped at all, because to me, I think it helped plenty. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'm going to take a break from timeline videos for a while. Oh, you're still here? Well, I guess that means you liked the video. So if you want, you can check out some of my other videos. And while you're here, you could even subscribe. That way you'll know whenever I upload another awesome video. And if you don't want to, that's fine too, I guess. In the meantime, stay awesome.